As the current administration's term draws to a close in less than 3 weeks, another week brings with it a wave of contract approvals.
22.8 billion naira, 107 billion naira, 91 billion naira, about 5.7 billion naira.
More than 37 memos were presented to the Council for consideration. The Council members, chaired by Vice President Yemi Oshibajo, in the absence of the President, who is out of the country on medical attention, deliberated for over 8 hours, discussing and assessing the various memos before it. One of the memos approved seeks to address revenue loss in the rail transportation sector. The Minister of Transportation highlights that the Abuja-Kaduna corridor alone has been losing over 400 million naira monthly.
The second memorandum is also from the Nigerian Railway Corporation to provide a secure e-ticketing solution for the Lagos-Ibadan corridor and the Warri-Itakpe corridor. Prior to the e-ticketing solution for the Abuja-Kaduna corridor, the Nigerian Railway Corporation was netting an average of about 80 million naira in sales per month. And upon the e-ticketing solution deployment, the revenues skyrocketed to an average of 500 million naira monthly.
The government has also allocated a substantial sum of 2.8 billion naira for water projects in Ogoni land. Additionally, an approval of 107 billion naira has been granted for the remediation of hydrocarbon-impacted sites. Meanwhile, the Federal Capital Territory has secured approvals for various projects, and road construction was over 120 billion naira. Several policies were also approved during the cabinet session. One of them is the National Dairy Policy, which aims to establish a framework and guiding principles for the growth and sustainability of the dairy subsector.
So this policy not only is to regulate that industry, but in some ways and in connection with other programs and projects and policies has also a lot to do with livestock production.
As the administration's mandate approaches its expiration on May 29, 2023, government officials are keen to assure Nigerians that the recent approvals made in the twilight of the tenure are not merely acts of altruism, but are, in fact, aimed at advancing the betterment of the country. Adesua Omoruan, Arise News.
Well, we're fine. $800 million loan approval or seeking the ratification by the House. And then, of course, the 320 billion naira project approval by FEC yesterday. Your thoughts?
Ayo, it has to be said. I think going forward, we need to make more measures around fiscal responsibility and spending and public spending in this country. Because we have a great level of indiscipline when it comes to public spending. I'll talk about the 800 million first. This borrowing has characterized President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. And that's why we are in debt. And you know what debt does? We all pay for debt. Even the poor you're trying to protect pays for debt. We all pay for debt in inflation. Most of the inflation we have today is occasioned partly by the debt of the federal government, including Ways and Means. That's a fact you can't deny. And just 19 days to go, he has gone on the debt spree again. And the National Assembly is considering all sorts of recklessness. And that's why, please, Nigerians must stand up. We can't afford to have another rubber stamp National Assembly. Because this rubber stamp National Assembly has destroyed our prospect enough in this night's assembly. They approve anything the president brings in a bid of working with the executive with no accountability. We talked about the first 800 billion, supposed to be palliatives to cushion the effect of subsidy. Subsidy has been pulled out. What happened to that money? Now we want another fresh 800 billion for a social $800 million for a social register that is highly contested, Ayo. Highly contested. I was seeing all sorts of arguments there that we will pay them digitally. Who verifies the social investment register? Is it today people have been committing scam with digital payments? It is even with digital payments that you can commit the easiest scam, because there's a scam called fake alerts. You can generate a lot of fake alerts with digital payments. Is there anybody to verify at the end? So the easiest scam is not even with digital. You can commit the easiest scam in the world, fake alert payments, and you bring the payment out for justification. So who are we deceiving? What we are saying is, you have money like this for welfare. What do you do with it? You improve social outcome. When you check human development indices in Nigeria, the reason why it's low is because Nigeria does not do well on social outcomes. No potable drinking water, no hospitals, no drugs in the hospital, no good education. If you plow that money into improving social outcome, Ayo, if it's just even ensuring that people get adequate medical care in all the federal medical centers, if it's just in ensuring that adults, because by default, as African people, we're predisposed to high blood pressure. If it's just by ensuring that adults over the certain age of 60 in every 774 local government area get access to BP drugs, they can go and collect BP drug for free in the government healthcare center, it will have gone a long way in saving them the cost of money they expend. So when you look at these things critically, these are the things we talk about. Everybody should condemn all sorts of spending this way. It is wrong. We can't keep plunging our country this way. Why are we even having a welfare scheme? If the economy is growing, it will cushion the effects. All we need to do is to make an enabling environment for this economy to grow 10%, double digits. And when you have wealth care scheme, tag them with outcomes. See, we are doing this welfare scheme the wrong way. The people we learned it from, Bolsa Familia in Brazil, they tie theirs to outcome. Before government gives you conditional cash transfer, your child must go to school. They must complete school, because when they complete school, then they can take you out of the poverty line. But we do everything upside down. That's why people look at us as a joke. 320 billion for project. Yes, there are projects on ground that has to be done. As long as it's justifiable, I've got no qualms with that. But you see, the interministerial agency play that make it so easy for these agencies of government to get away with what they get away with is what we should now look at. The problem has always been there's a lack of accountability to a large extent in government. And that's why I was happy recently when the federal government, did sign, at a party talk about the use of blockchain in government affairs. Maybe that will bring some level of accountability. Because we fall short on accountability. And those are the issues we have in this country. That agencies can just run amok, and now you're telling them, oh, there's an oversight, you have to return some certain amount of money. It is just because, it is that same reason, Ayo, that makes it so easy for a power minister that just served 2 years to be caught in the 22 billion corruption scandal. We need to do better in government. We need to do better, because these people forget that the decisions they make affect the generations of Nigerians. For every 4-year government, 4-year decision you make, it has a knock-on effect on a generation for the next 30 years. I'm sure you know that some of the decisions President Muhammadu Buhari made in 1983, 40 years ago, is still affecting us till today. When are we going to introspect? When are we going to think deeply about this country?
Well, very well said, Rufai. Going back, first of all, the $800 million loan, which the president is looking to or seeking approval from the Senate. What they said is that they want to pay, as you've mentioned, 5,000 naira to 10.2 million people, and hopefully having a far-reaching effect in terms of reaching at least 60 million people in Nigeria. How are they going to source this 10.2 for 6 months? How are they going to source this 10.2 million people? It would be through the social register, which we have talked about a number of times in terms of how do these names go on there. I don't know how many people know people who are on that register and what, the monies that have been dispersed to them in the past, if they can demonstrate by showing record. And as you mentioned, how we're going to see that it's the most vulnerable that get this money. I quite align with your take in terms of building infrastructure in place of doling out money. Because there's a reason why you say people are on the dole. It can be quite addictive to be, when you run a welfare system, especially when there are no outcomes attached to it, where people rely on handouts from the government because the government is not doing what it's supposed to do in terms of providing infrastructure to enable people have a great quality of life. That's a challenge. The other thing is that this government is seeking a loan for the next 6 months with only 19 days to go. When you think about that, you begin to wonder, what could they not do in the last 4 years or 8 years that towards the end of the administration, with only a few days to go, they are seeking to borrow even more money? Why not leave it to the next administration to make that decision as to whether they want to go ahead with this loan or incur more loans? Because already the DG of the Budget Office, Mr. Ben Akabueze, has said yesterday during the training of the incoming legislatures that we are almost in a crisis. He's talked about the fact that our debt service ratio is at 100%. That at 30%, you should begin to worry. So we have a revenue problem, which is something that we talk about a lot. So what we should be doing now is not seeking to get more loans. It's to see how we can generate more revenue and make the quality of lives of Nigerians, especially through infrastructural development, better. This government has prided itself on its infrastructural development, the fact that they've been able to build bridges, do this and that. However, when it comes to welfare and amenities, unfortunately, we cannot quite score them high. And you can see the resultant effect on the economy. People are poorer, and this is shown by multidimensional index, 133 million people now multidimensionally poor. When you see the fact that the projects or initiatives that you have embarked on in the administration hasn't produced much fruit, instead, we have people, over 100 million Nigerians in multidimensional poverty, then you must begin to question these initiatives, this social intervention program, this Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, and this welfarist approach to the Nigerian problem. Unfortunately, we don't see to have had such a deep impact. They try to defend it that, a number of people have been lifted out of poverty, but again, the facts are there for us to see. So, the recommendation is, or perhaps the thinking is, why now? Why not wait till the next administration comes? We've talked about the fact that the next administration will have the burden, a burden of addressing the economy, and also would possibly have to have their own supplementary budget. And now you want to incur more debt so that they come into a program that was initiated by this administration to continue it. Doesn't seem to be much wisdom in that. And so the $800 million, initially we had talked about the palliatives for the removal of subsidy. Now subsidy has been said not to be removed again, at least for until the next administration comes up. So why not give them the burden of the decision to know if they want to go ahead with this loan? Loans upon loans, revenue challenge, debt service ratio very high. We cannot continue like this. We've talked about the fact a number of times that loan in itself is not a bad thing. What you do with it is what the challenge is and how you are generating revenue as a nation. And comparatively in Africa and across the world, we're doing really poorly. GDP ratio to debt is very low. It's at about 30% or 15% in Nigeria. In other parts of the countries, about 30 of Africa is about 30%. So in terms of money, we are doing poorly. Another loan, 19 days to go. You may wonder. The second part I was going to actually touch on with the second story on the approval is when Adeswa talked about the fact that the VP presided over the Federal Executive Council meeting yesterday, it made me remember that the president is out of the country. And why did he have to extend his stay in the United Kingdom? Because his dentist his specialist has told him that he has to stay 5 days extra for a dental appointment. then you begin to wonder that don't we get a bit embarrassed when we have stories like this, when the first man citizen of the country has to go abroad to seek dental help. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if there are specialists around the world, or if it was an emergency case because he went for a program and they saw that he needed to stay a bit longer to deal with his health. But you begin to wonder that in 8 years, they couldn't improve the health sector such that we have excellent, excellent doctors. Rufai, I won't be surprised if the specialist doctor in the UK that is attending to him is Nigerian.
Will be a Nigerian, yes.
So why don't they have the enabling environment in this country to thrive? Why are people going abroad, and why does this administration encourage that by continuously seeking medical attention abroad? The hope is that the next administration will pay very close attention to the health sector, as with education and other aspects of society, of the economy. Well, moving on to the next story, the chairman of the Southern Governors Forum and Ondo State Governor, Rotimi Akeredolu, has condemned the zoning arrangement by the All Progressives Congress for the leadership of the 10th National Assembly. In a statement, Akeredolu described it as a skewed arrangement that reinforces injustice, distrust, and suspicion. He said the formula favors the Northwest and personalities close to the president-elect, while the North Central is left with no positions. He said the party's National Working Committee did not carry Progressives Governors Forum along before coming to the public with a zoning formula. Top contenders for the speakership position in the House of Representatives, led by the Deputy Speaker, Idris Wase, have stormed the APC National Secretariat, where they held a meeting with the party's chairman, Abdullahi Adamu, and members of the National Working Committee to call for a review of the zoning of the National Assembly presiding officers' positions. Arise correspondent Indi Amalgo reports.
Following the discordant views arising from the zoning arrangement of the All Progressives Congress, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Idris Wase, is leading 5 other top contenders for the speakership of the House to the APC headquarters in Abuja to call for a review. Those at the meeting include Yusuf Gagdi, Plateau State; Sani Jaji, Zamfara State; Mokhtar Betara, Borno State; and Sada Soli from Katsina State. Addressing the chairman, members of the NWC and journalists, Wase said the legislators feel betrayed and want the arrangement to be reviewed.
I have to talk to you in this manner, and I appeal to you, sir, and I appeal to the conscience of this great institution of our party to again revisit what they have done. Even though you have said it's not for close, but the attempt now and the sell out now is that this is a foreclosed matter because it is also in the social media. And I think it will not portend well. We do not want a repeat of what has happened in the past. We should not forget about the temporalization of what happened in the House of Representatives.
Yusuf Gagdi and Sada Soli came down hard on the party's leadership for not consulting widely before arriving at the controversial zoning formula, with some making claims that the issue of who becomes the Speaker of the House is a national security issue.
Sir, justice should be done. We are appealing because you are a father. If not, sir, because of the integrity of the members of the State Working Committee, the real language in our letter is that we are rejecting. We are rejecting what is in circulation. It is unacceptable to us. We are independent bodies, sir. National Assembly cannot be turned to be like a Federal Executive Council where you pick whosoever you want to pick for. It can't be run like that. When we will elect our leaders, all of you will not be there. It is we and the conscience and our covenant with the people of Nigeria that will be in the hallowed chamber.
Now the party is zoning the Deputy Senate President and the Speaker to the same zone. We've been in this assembly, sir. There's no time two presiding officers are zoned to one area. It has never happened.
Others told the chairman that it would be better if the members are allowed to consult among themselves and choose, instead of foisting Tajuddin Abbas as Speaker, who is not known to many members of the House.
The speakership is a national security issue. For those of us who know the history of the National Assembly, I know what I'm talking about. So shine your eyes.
APC National Chairman Abdullahi Adamu is calling for calm while urging the members not to allow emotions to take center stage as the party is working hard to douse tension.
We did say very clearly that we will endeavor to do more consultations so that we can carry along with us the greater number of the members of this great party.
There are fears that with such unity among the top contenders for the House speakership, if the APC does not review their demands, they may team up with the opposition to present the Bukola Saraki scenario that happened in 2015. Ndi Amugo, Arise News.
Well, thank you, Ndi Amugo. You're just about to tell me a lot to talk about Ayo. But yes, a lot to talk about Rufai.
Yeah. I mean, all right, let's go straight to it. Truth has to be told. The APC is at a precipice. And I'm sure somebody will have told them. One thing I admire so much about Governor Akeredolu is his objective stance on issues. He got this right. He said it the way it has to be said. You see, this dance APC is doing, they forget in a hurry that it takes two to do the Argentine dance called the tango. One person does not do the tango alone. It takes them, the lawmakers, accepting for this tango dance to happen. And when they do what they have done, like they have done it this way, that you skew a lot of positions to the northwest. The north central is not considered. The northeast is not considered. The southeast is not considered. There's going to be a blowback. And it is that blowback you saw yesterday. And I hope they get it. Already, people like Jules Okalo is already aligning with senators, from the southeast. And they're going to put a position forward. So it's going to be a great sense of drama. And for me, the sad part is when they try to cite party supremacy as against the collective development of Nigeria. Truth has to be told. The APC should watch it. They are treading on a wrong ground. And there will be repercussions. But on the flip side of it, that's one analysis. On the flip side of it, so you can't trust Nigerian politicians. Because the minute the president-elect comes back probably to the country and finalizes this matter and does a deal, Nigerian politicians, because of what they will eat, most of them don't have sense. Some of them don't have sense. Once you promise them juicy positions, at first they will lie to you that they are fighting for the people, but it's their pocket they are fighting for. So when you promise them juicy committees, they shut up. Unfairness and injustice, they don't talk about that again. So when you also consider that part of the analysis, you can also trust these threats that they are making, that they are going to decide on the floor. The Constitution says, yes, the senators have a right to decide on the floor. You are hearing them make threats now. But because of what I call attenuism, which means greed. I'm sorry, I like to have this Yoruba coinage because it helps me explain things properly.
Fine, it sounds good.
Because of this attenuism, once they call most of these guys and promise them juicy committees, all of these threats might be empty. But in a fair, sane society, you must have equity. You must have justice. I don't see any reason why the Northwest, all of a sudden, will get two key national positions. The Southeast will just get a deputy speakership. The North Central will not even get anything, based on their arrangements. And the Northeast too. This is the injustice we keep talking about. Ideally, you are supposed to expect drama on the floor of the Senate. But also the Nigerian politicians, largely that I know, once you promise them the juicy deal, attenuism sets in, and you see the man that is protesting injustice say, party reigns supreme, party supremacy must come first. It's a lie. He has collected something at the back. They've promised him something juicy. They've also promised him that, they are going to remove his EFCC encumbrance. EFCC too is another political encumbrance. When they want to deal with you sometimes, they hang it around your neck. And they tell you, oh, don't worry, when you do our bidding, we remove it. It's a lie, yo. But we must keep speaking up for fairness. Because why we're speaking up for this is we don't want another rubber stamp National Assembly. That will be like this one now that they are pushing $800 million to 17 days to go. The same one that all of a sudden concretize an illegality by securitizing ways and means. I rest my case.
All right. Okay. So just a few things to add to what you've said. We've talked about this issue a number of times on this show. We're going to be having a further conversation in the course of today's show. We have a guest who's going to be speaking to us based on this. However, a few questions I'd like to just ask, or perhaps begin, out of curiosity. In the past, what obtains is even when a party zones a position, they zone it to a geopolitical zone, not necessarily say this is the person we're going with, so that members of the House who are from that zone can then battle it out. So we saw that, and so the conversations earlier had been, which zone would it be? Would it, number one, first be zoned? Will the principal positions in the House be zoned? Number two, if it would be zoned, where would it be zoned? And then the people who were in these zones could then jostle for the position. What we've seen by the APC, which perhaps is what is making a lot of these members kick against, is the fact that they've not just zoned to a particular area, they've also chosen or anointed people to take it up. So it's even rubber stamp before the rubber stamp. Yeah. So you're just going to the floor, the votes have been decided in court, and you're just going there to make it formal, to formalize the process that's already been decided. And this sort of gives a picture, perhaps, of what would happen, what would be reflected in the 10th Assembly if this is allowed to go through. The fact that decisions are made amongst a few. They come out and they say, this is how we are voting, alongside we're voting, and then you just have to go along with it and do it. As you have talked about party supremacy, there's a big challenge with that. And we saw this in the 9th Assembly, whereby you've already cited the instances. We've had cases where the Senate was not able to function in its role as being able to hold the executive to account, because everything the executive brought to it was just, just goes through the motion and it passes through. Herein lies the problem. Now, beyond that is the politics, of course, of the senators who feel aggrieved and feel that this is an unjust, or it's unjust and it's an injustice meted. That how did they arrive at that? Some zones were marginalized, and we've talked about this a number of times. I still ask the question, what happened to the Northwest? I understand the argument that there are other principal positions, leader of the House, the whip, the chief whip of the House, secretary to the Federation, but these positions are not the number 3 or number 4 position. So it at best would be a compensation for these principal offices. And I don't know how well this would be taken in terms of a compensation. What APC wants to avoid, especially with the composition of the House as it is a House divided against itself. Because as had been said again and again, what happened in 2015 with the Senator Bukola Saraki case could repeat itself, especially as there might be alliances formed with other minor political parties in the House who would be more than willing to perhaps cut a deal with, in order to get a footing in one of the principal positions. So what we're expecting or looking forward to in the next few days is for APC to get their house together, especially whether through engaging with their members. Like if I said, they might cut a deal, but at the end of it all, what we are trusting these elected senators, House of Reps members to do is to remember the people who trusted them with their votes, and to act in the best interest of the people and not in the best interest, in their own personal best interest. This is what Nigerians are looking forward to. We're looking forward to a 10th Assembly that's strong, a 10th Assembly that would function in its role, and a 10th Assembly that would work for the good of the Nigerian people.